The Marinade.
There's no O in Marinade. Let's try it one more time. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
The Marinade.
Marinade.
Bone Marinade.
That's
The Marinade.
The Marinade. With Jason Earle. Welcome to The Marinade with Jason Earle, episode 18, y'all, with the great Hannah Harber. This is such an honor, and I'm so excited that this came together the way that it did. We just celebrated a year, y'all. The very first episode of The Marinade was released on September 6th, 2017. Just really amazing to think how far we've come. And I know I do a lot of that reminiscing, but 1 year is, I'm really proud of that. And I'm really proud of the way that we've grown, the support that we've gotten from all of you, the support that we've gotten from some of our favorite musicians, the conversations that we've had with these incredible creatives, branching out, getting away from just music with Vanessa Jean Speckman last episode, to have BJ Barham on twice is such a thrill, and I'm so thankful that each and every one of you has supported us along the way. This episode is such a perfect sort of 1 year celebration. It encompasses everything that really I would hope that the Marinade would become. It is a true conversation about the creative process, and it came together so organically. I'm really happy that Hannah spent the time to talk with us, but what's crazy about it is that we were just going to sit down and do an intro for the BJ Barham episode. For the second time, the return that BJ did to the Marinade, which became episode 16, Hannah Harber came over and we started talking about a story that you heard on that episode about her accidentally breaking BJ's capo. And then we just started rapping about life. And y'all, Hannah is a bright light. And I realized that this had to be its own episode. She's a singer and a songwriter, and she sings with conviction. Sometimes you can catch her solo acoustic, and other times she's accompanied by her band, the Lionhearts, and I've had the good fortune of seeing her do both. Most recently, I saw her open for American Aquarium and Travis Meadows from episodes 15 and 16, respectively. And that led to this conversation, as I mentioned before. We talk about a couple of people by first name only during the episode, so I kind of just want to give you a heads up so that you're not lost. We talk about Will, the owner of Will's Pub here in Orlando, where I record many of our episodes. And then we talk about Thomas Wynn, Hannah's husband, who's an incredible musician in his own right. And you can check out Thomas's music with his band Thomas Wynn and the Believers. Also, really exciting news, Hannah and the Lionhearts have made some progress in the studio after a very successful Kickstarter campaign. And so their new album is going to be coming out fairly soon, and we have a sneak peek. We have a song that hasn't even been mastered yet that Hannah was willing to share with us, and it sounds amazing. It's an absolute burner. Just so fired up for you guys to hear it. I'm so grateful to Hannah for her time and her openness. She's such an insightful and funny person. Listening back to this was so much fun, and y'all, it took me out of a funk. I was just kind of in a not so great place emotionally, and I went back to edit this episode, and our conversation and the things that she said and the exchanges that we had were really inspiring to me. And it took me back to that moment where we recorded here at the house right after we'd moved in. Chris and I had moved in, and Chris was in the other room doing a woodworking project. There was just a creative energy about the whole thing, and Hannah really opened up. I'm so grateful for Hannah. I'm so grateful for her music. I'm so grateful for the friendship that we've been developing since this. I just think that we are lucky in Orlando to have her, and I'm grateful that the rest of the world is getting a chance to hear her on this episode. Ladies and gentlemen, Hannah Harber.
The battle lines drawn through my heart, and victory is undefined. I wanna run to the other side of the sun. Whoa, now
Yeah. That may be better. That is better.
I feel like a 70s newscaster.
Welcome to CBS Nightly with Hannah Harber. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me.
This is awesome. Welcome to the Marinade with Jason Earle,
Yes,
actually, with Hannah Harber. This is so cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I want to talk about so many different things.
Okay,
Right.
deal.
So, I think the first thing I want to start with is just sort of that night that you opened for Travis and American Aquarium was such a magical time. Like everything about it, from start to finish. Your set was beautiful, and then those two.
I'm still not over it.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you kind of walk through so your opening? What is that whole experience like for you?
Yeah. So it actually is kind of extra magical too, because Will and I had a miscommunication about me opening the show in general. So I didn't know that it was happening until like 5 a.m. I woke up that morning because I have a little boy and he gets up at random hours.
How rock and roll.
Yeah. Oh, so rock and roll. And I had a message from Will that said, "Hey, are you good for tonight?" And I was like, wait a minute. What? 'Cause it had been months since we had really talked about it.
Yeah.
So I think that part kind of added to the magic for me too. But
what did you wait a minute? So sorry to cut you
no,
off,
it's okay.
but what did you do? Like you didn't have any preparation then? You didn't
well, I
have
mean, I didn't know for sure. I didn't know that I shouldn't even say for sure. I didn't know I was doing it. We had talked about it months prior, like before BJ even announced the show. And there were no announced openers at that point. So Will and I were talking like, hey, if BJ needs somebody, like the Lionhearts would love to do it.
Right.
And then I was like, oh, well, he's got solo acoustic openers. Like that's not going to work for us to have like a local full band and then jump back down to more stripped down. Anyway, so Will and I just kind of dropped it, didn't talk about it until the morning of again.
That has to change your preparation, I would think.
It does, but I kind of work better under pressure.
Oh, cool.
I'm one of those people.
Yeah.
And I think it just meant more to me then because it was like, oh, I'm going to go do this. Okay, cool. Like, let's just be as candid and vulnerable as we can. I threw a set together and because I haven't played solo like that in a little while.
Right.
I haven't really been playing much because we're working on recording, but so yeah, I think that just kind of added fuel to the fire for me. That when I got there, it was like, 12 hours ago, I didn't even know I was doing this. So
you didn't even have a capo.
I didn't even have a capo. Oh my goodness.
Can you tell that story?
Yes, I will tell the story. So I did at home that day. I kind of ran through some of my songs that I knew I would do. And since I've got a full band as well, to kind of come back to a full set of songs without their accompaniment is a little different. So the arrangements of the songs change a little. So anyway, I'd been working on that at home. I had this one song where I needed a capo. I left the capo at home. So I get on stage, I get all set up, and I just had a line check. So I open my guitar case, I put my strap on, I realize I don't have a capo in my case. So I go down to the merch table and talk to Pigs, and he's like, oh, just take the one off BJ's headstock, it'll be fine. Of course it'll be fine. What could go wrong? So if you were at the show, people listening, the guitars on stage, there were so many instruments on stage, and Will's stage is not huge. So I tiptoe around, I grab BJ's capo, put it on my guitar. The song I played that needed it was the third song in, I think. And I go to take the capo off my guitar, and the thing literally just falls apart into two pieces in my hands. And there was that because Will's also isn't very big in front of where the stage is. And so people standing there were like, oh, she just broke that. Oh, no. And so it was fine. I just play the rest of the set. But was it a Sunday or a Monday?
It was a Monday.
A Monday night. So at this point, it's 9 p.m. Yeah. So I'm as I'm playing the rest of my set, I'm racking my brain. Where can I go right now to even go buy him a new capo?
Oh,
he's going to need this in a half an hour, you know? So I get off the stage and I go down to Pigs. I'm like, I'm so sorry. And Pigs just chuckles and he's like, oh, look at this thing. It was bound to break soon or whatever. And so then I'm still just oh, God, I got to tell BJ. Oh, I broke it. What a dummy. Of course this happens to me. So BJ comes in, he talks to Pigs, and I'm standing off to the side of the merch table, and I didn't really even see him come in until he was making a beeline toward me, and I thought to myself, oh God, here it comes. And he just grins and hugs me, and he's like, I was about to break it if you didn't, in that nice southern drawl that he has. And I was just like, gosh, how gracious of a human,
Yeah.
And not that I wouldn't have expected that from him,
right.
But when you're on the road and your stuff is your stuff, I totally would have understood if he was like, this girl what the heck, you
Yeah.
know? But he was just so kind about it, and went on to play his set. I like left him some money. He came back over. He gave me the money. He's like, I have 3 other capos in my case. Like,
Yeah.
stop it. You
They
know?
got a bus now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm on a bus, lady. Enjoy your ride home in your Kia. But yeah, he was just so kind.
Yeah. And that's how he is. You know,
Yeah.
there's no bullshit in that guy. You know, he is just like a very genuine, honest guy. That's
Yeah,
just kind
it
of how he
seems
is.
like it. It really
Yeah.
does.
And that was the second time I had a chance to record with him. And this time he opened up so much. And so
Yeah.
I'm really excited for this episode because he just like, we were on his bus.
Yeah.
So he just was like, I was going to record right behind Indy's, which is where I usually record.
Okay.
But it was like 730 degrees. You know, it was like the hottest day of the year. And so he's like, let me just go ask the boys if we can record. He's wearing like, you know, he's a rock and roller. He's wearing black jeans and a black shirt and his Dale Earnhardt hat,
Yeah,
you know?
that's right.
So he's dressed like BJ Barham, you
Yeah.
know? And he's like, let me see if they'll let us record on the bus. So we went on their bus, and it was like from the future. You push a button and the door slides, and then you
That's
push
so
another
cool.
button and the door
Yeah.
slides. And we went all the way to the back and kind of in his chambers, you know, and we just
Yeah.
kind of sat on his bed and talked. And it was
That's
sort of like
great.
just buddies, you know,
Yeah.
sitting and talking, which was really fun. So you survived the capo incident.
We survived the capo
You survived
incident.
not really knowing whether you were playing that night or not.
Yeah.
And then what is that like? I'm just picturing you got these 2 incredible acts coming up after you,
man.
right?
Yeah.
And had you listened to much of Travis's stuff before?
I had, and
Okay.
actually I was, of course, so excited to see American Aquarium. It had been probably 5 or 6 years since I'd seen them.
Yeah.
And but I think probably maybe a year ago, or maybe not that long, because I think First Cigarette of Travis's came out like beginning of this year, so it couldn't have been too terribly long ago. I had a friend in Nashville who posted something about him, and it was just like a casual Instagram post. It wasn't even like, oh, check out my friend Travis. It was just musicians sitting around playing, and he happened to be the one playing.
Yeah.
And I was just immediately like drawn to whatever he was doing. I don't even remember what he was playing.
Yeah.
So when First Cigarette came out, I just kind of devoured it.
Yeah.
And so, but then, you know, like we all do, you listen to something, you love it, and then it's not that you forget about it, but you then start listening to something else or
Right,
whatever.
right.
So when Travis got announced as the opener for the BJ show, I was like especially excited to
Yeah.
see him. And I just was not prepared for what an experience that was.
Wow.
To, you know, even knowing the songs and knowing the few songs, like, oh, I can't wait to hear this one. I really can't wait to hear this one. He's just like a songwriter.
How can you say more about that? Like what the experience was like? I mean, we were there together for a
Yeah.
lot of it, standing next to each other. And I think there was this feeling, you know, it was the 2 of us and Jen Ross, whose shots came out.
Oh man, they're
God,
incredible.
of course,
I
of course.
know.
But I'm so grateful to have her on
Yeah.
board. Like she's such a good person and such an incredible photographer
Yeah,
too.
she is.
But that was really fun to sit there. There was an energy, you
Yep.
know, about that whole experience. For you watching that, right?
Yeah.
So you've just come off stage. Are you able to just switch on your fan hat in that moment?
I am. I think, you know, maybe the answer is different for everyone, but I always want to be a fan first. And so it is kind of easy for me to like step down and then all of a sudden, you know, fangirl over what's in front of me.
That's
but
awesome.
For something like a night like that, where the songs matter so much, like it's not a night to, you know, you're not going to be grooving, dancing. I mean, maybe
Yeah,
you will, but
sure.
it's so much more about like listening to the truth as it's presented to you.
Oh, wow.
And I just feel like Travis, he just nails that. I don't know any other way to say it. And I think that vulnerability that comes across from him it's powerful because it allows you to be more vulnerable with yourself or with the person next to you. And if you're standing next to me feeling that same way in yourself, there's power in us feeling that thing between
Right.
us. You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
He did that to me, for me at Will's that night. And then to have that followed up by an incredible rock and roll show
Yeah.
was just like, it was phenomenal. That pairing is phenomenal.
It is ideal, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like you mentioned the fact that you wouldn't have wanted to put the Lionhearts up there and then go back to Travis and then go back up to American Aquarium.
Right.
The sequencing was perfect. What a perfect bill.
Yeah.
I mean, you had your thing, then he had a cello with him.
Oh my gosh, it was
kidding me?
It was amazing. I know.
And then you know, so it's like a little bit step up in the fullness of the sound.
Yeah.
The emotions there with your music, that's one of the things that really comes through in your music is
Thank
just
you.
like there's a soul to it that that you would hope for. What's up, bud? What's the matter?
So
Sorry, guys. Tommy's upset. What is it, dude? Everybody's heard about Tommy on the show. You okay? It's okay. Yeah, he's the best. So there you go. That's better. There's that soul to your music, and then Travis is just full of so much emotion.
Yeah.
It's been interesting. I just released episode 15 2 days ago.
Yeah,
You did?
I did.
Isn't it wonderful?
It is amazing. Yeah.
And I don't mean that from anything I did. I mean just
No, it's
him, just what he shared and how he shared. The response to that one has been amazing.
I'm sure.
Messages from people about how that like his conversation is impacting their life, his music is impacting their life. What an amazing it's not necessarily a responsibility, maybe it is. I don't know if you feel that like with music, whether it's you have any sort of responsibility to your audience, or do you think of it in terms of like, I'm just going to create great art and hopefully people like that?
I think both have to come into play, but I can only speak for myself.
Yeah.
I am in a season, or maybe this is a rebirth kind of thing. I'm not sure, but right now I'm really attached to making sure that I'm not leading with my ego. And so that can change sonically how I arrange something, or a line that I might write a different way if it's that I'm too concerned about how it might be received. There are some people who, if their bend is absolutely, I am responsible for how someone might hear this, then fine, let that be your bend. But I'm a little bit in a place right now where, well, not a little bit, I am in a place right now where I just want to make sure that I'm allowing myself to be vulnerable. And if that means somebody disagrees, or if it means that I might give someone the wrong impression, then that's okay. But I think that it's a privilege that comes along with the responsibility of telling the truth. And it doesn't have to be mine entirely, but the truth as I can see it around me or feel it, or what someone else might tell me about their truth. I think that's where the responsibility lies, that we don't get too caught up in what like our ego might say about a situation, but just what is happening here. What do I see here?
So how do you get there?
That makes sense.
It makes a ton of sense.
Okay.
How do you get out of your ego? And
I think you have to get there before you sit down to write. So however you get there, for me, that's yoga and meditation and eating good food and not drinking too much. And there's little things I think along the way, but we're given an intuition for a reason, and I think if you're at battle with yours, then your art suffers entirely.
Oh wow!
And if even for people who don't consider themselves an artist, everyone is creative,
right?
And so
that's the whole purpose of the show.
Yeah, awesome.
You know
awesome.
what I mean?
So
yeah.
like, if you're a chef, your food suffers if you're at battle with your intuition.
Right.
I don't know.
That.
Maybe that's too whatever, but.
I love that too. What you just said though about the idea that you just captured the essence of why we do this. That's why this show exists right here. Is like because I truly believe that there is a creative element to every discipline in life. That could be not just a profession.
Yeah.
That could be the meal that you're cooking in your kitchen. That could be the way you raise your kid. That
Absolutely.
could be your interactions with your pets. It could be interpersonal interactions. There is an element of creativity in all of that. And if it's not honest, if it's not true, then that takes away from those interactions.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So when you sit down, does that look like then you get up, you meditate, and you sit down to write? Or?
Lord, I wish. But I have, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Julia Cameron and The Artist's Way.
Oh, yeah.
But I did start that a few months ago, and I've tried to give myself the grace to start and restart and start and restart.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're also familiar with the Enneagram, but I'm a 2 on the Enneagram, and for me, like the elements of pride are something that I really struggle with in the way that I talk to myself, not necessarily how someone else might see me, but the way I see myself. So I have to unendingly give myself the grace to start again of things like my morning meditation or my morning pages, which is what Julia Cameron calls just kind of like that first outpouring of writing.
Yeah.
Just get it out, do the work, do your craft, throw it away if you have to.
Yep.
Never read it again. Or maybe you do, but I try to be, and Thomas and I just implemented this again as a kind of rule in our household now that he's off tour, but we don't do any social media-ing before noon. And I think in some weird way, just that little discipline shifts things. And I remember you mentioned something about that on a recent one. Maybe that was with Travis. I'm not sure, but
I've mentioned it several times recently because and I keep putting it out there to hold myself accountable. You know what I mean?
It's good. Yeah.
For me, it's no internet at all until for the first 2 hours of the day.
Good for you. Yeah.
But don't give me too much credit because the last few days, especially with the release of the episode, the last episode, because I'm so excited about it.
Right.
You know, like I'm so proud of everything that we've done. But episode 15, I was just like, I feel like we're gaining momentum in terms of the way it sounds and the connection that I'm having with guests and there's just something really beautiful happening with the show right now. Yeah. So I am guilty of like hopping on and sending a tweet at I'm up at 5:30 most mornings.
Right.
Like by 6 o'clock, I'm already tweeting.
Yeah.
But for about 2 months there, I was really, really good about it. And it was the happiest I've been in a long time.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
And for you, it sounds like you're not beating yourself up when you don't do it.
No.
And then that's kind of, I think, my mindset that I've had to make sure that I remember. It's go back to your discipline, but don't tell yourself you're a dummy because you didn't stick to it. You know, just start again.
That's hard too.
It is.
And for me, at least, I can't speak for you, but it's hard, right?
Yeah.
Where like because you want to feel like you're disciplined enough.
Right. I'm an adult human. Like
all I'm asking of myself is to not get on the internet for 2 hours.
Right.
That is not a huge ask.
Right.
Right?
Right.
But I've failed the last 2 days. You know? Probably the last 3 days if let's get back to the truth. But it does make a difference. It makes a difference in your happiness.
Yeah.
You know? And it's hard though because so if you're going to produce music or a podcast is strictly web-based. If you're going to produce music and you've got a Kickstarter, you got a new album that you're working on, where is that? You have to have the internet. I don't want to get too deep into that because I want to hear about the Kickstarter. I want to hear about the album. Where's the process?
Yeah.
You look so excited even thinking about it.
I am so excited.
That's
I am
great.
so excited. I waited so long to get here. Yeah. And I think that not because I made myself, I just didn't feel like the time was right. And so once something does feel right, it's like it's electric inside of me. I cannot wait to get all this rolling even more. And the fact that I'm even stepping into the studio, I'm that excited. Like, I don't even care that it's going to come out right now. I'm getting to do this part. But yeah, the Kickstarter, I did one about 7 years ago, for the first EP I ever put out, and it was wonderful. And I'm grateful for it. And then I thought to myself, okay, I can never do that again because I used that route once already. I already asked like that.
Yeah.
So I had some friends about a year ago do one, and it was wildly successful. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, that's so brave. And then I checked myself right away. Like, I think that's brave, and I won't do it. So what I'm saying is, like, it's okay for them to do it, and how brave of them, but I could never.
Yeah.
Like, what am I robbing myself of here?
Wow.
You know? And so I talked to Thomas about it, and I said, I know the time isn't right now, but when I feel like it is, I'm going to do this again.
Yeah.
So here I am, and we're in the middle of it, and I think we have like 20 days left, somewhere, give or take, and we're about 75% funded, which is like so wildly exciting.
That's so exciting.
It is so exciting. And I was talking to a friend last night about it because I feel like because I did wait until it felt right, I'm not concerned at all that it's not going to make it. I don't mean that to sound like arrogant or lofty, other than to say, like, I really believe in this and I see it already, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And so to watch that number climb is just like this, yes,
That's
we're
so
doing
fun.
it, we're doing it, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's incredibly
So
exciting.
where are the songs written?
Songs are written.
Okay.
I'm not entirely certain the number of tracks. That'll kind of depend on where we fall financially. but we're recording. I say on the Kickstarter video it's in Longwood, but I think they're technically in Castleberry, but it's a studio called Pioneer Sound, so close by.
Okay.
And they've just been incredible to work with. And Thomas and I will do a little bit of some of the post-production work in Nashville, and then it'll hopefully be ready to go. I'm gonna say like first week of November is like my hope.
Yeah.
That it's out into the world. I turned 30 that week, and I said to myself like a year ago, I want to put something out by the time I'm 30, and then here we are, it's happening. So
Oh, interesting.
yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Do you think you were conscious of that? Like, or was that the thing you said?
I think I just like wanted to be.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to make yourself believe it. Like, isn't that the point of a mantra? You know, like
Right,
you speak it until you believe it. And like, so I'm going to do that.
Right.
And then I immediately shied away from it for a little bit, but here we are. It's coming. It's
That's
coming.
great. But I mean, that's good. And again, giving yourself permission to
Yeah.
like, no, it didn't come together perfectly like it did in my mind's eye.
Right,
And that's
right.
totally okay.
Yeah.
It's here.
Yeah.
And it's going to be out in November.
Right.
And wow,
Yeah.
it's all how beautiful
Yeah.
that you got it done. Did the songs come together at the same time, or are they spread out over?
You mean recording them or writing them?
Writing them.
Writing them has been, there are a couple that I've had for, I would say, a few years.
Yeah.
A couple of them as recent as like last summer.
Okay.
But nothing that I've written immediately. There's one song on there that's kind of an iffy right now. It hasn't been tracked yet. We're doing the rest of the tracking in August. But that I recently wrote, and the band, we like started to work it up, and we all got really excited about it. And then it was like, but we don't have the time to really work it up. But before we go in the studio, but we all kind of have that thing about it. So I think we might see how it goes. And that one's just a couple of months old, but most of them I've been sitting on for a little while. And that feels good.
Yeah.
You know, because you tweak them too much, and then you just go, okay, done.
But you also, I would assume, know those songs pretty well too.
You do.
You know, when you write, are you starting with an idea? Is it coming in pieces?
I'm a pieces person, and it's like my best stuff comes when I'm driving. I don't know what it is for me about motion, like driving.
I've never heard that.
Yeah. So I named the band while I was driving. I like named my child when I was driving. I have a handful of songs I can think of off the top of my head that while I was driving, it was like this line came to me, or this melody line came to me.
Whoa.
And I'll just like voice memo them
Okay.
and then come back to them.
Yeah.
The songs, I only have one song that I've ever like intended to sit down to write that I've loved. And that's not because I don't think that you can get something when you intentionally make space to like, okay, I'm gonna sit on the couch for the next 2 hours, I'm only gonna write a song. I've gotten ones out of that.
Yeah.
But as far as ones that I've, like, those are like my work songs. Like, okay, you gotta do it. You just gotta do it. The stuff that comes to me driving, I don't know. It's like a weird sacred space for me in the car.
That's so interesting. Has that always been the case? Like even from early memories
I mean,
of
I
driving?
guess I started writing before I could drive, so I guess it hasn't always been the case, but it is now, and I'm so okay with it.
Yeah.
But I also do, maybe now that I'm a mom, like when I'm driving, especially if I'm alone in the car, that's like the only time that's just really just me,
Yeah.
you know? And maybe it's the silence, maybe it's the motion. I have no idea, but there's some sort of sacred magic when I'm driving the car.
Oh, wow. That's so interesting. I don't think I've
Yeah.
ever heard that. Travis did say something about being in, like on the road sometimes if he's in the van or whatever, that idea will come on because he doesn't really ride on the road.
Yeah.
You know, but I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that when they're driving. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you started writing before you could drive.
Mm-hmm.
So music obviously been a part of your life for a long time. You also mentioned to me at the show that Swanee was a part of your childhood.
Yeah.
So what were your early musical influences?
So I have like embarrassing ones, obviously.
We all do.
Yeah, like I remember, and I'll tell you an embarrassing one so I can just get it out of the way. But I remember distinctly that when Jessica Simpson was making music, I wrote a fan letter to her. And my sister like I was too nervous. I was like, oh, this is so stupid. And I like threw it in my closet, and my sister found it and read it. And she was like, Hannah, what in the world is this? I was probably, I don't know, 12.
Yeah.
But anyways, there's my really embarrassing one.
Older
Jessica,
sister?
I love you. Yeah, older sister.
Yeah. Jessica's a huge fan of the Marinade.
Yeah, I'm sure she is.
Huge fan.
I'm sure she is.
She won't leave me alone.
Yeah. That's so great. But no, I think because my dad was in like a bar band.
Yeah.
So there was obviously a lot of Rolling Stones and Tom Petty and James Taylor and, you know, just great older.
That's not a bad
coming
education.
Coming out of the stereo at home. But because we traveled to festivals as like our family vacation, there were a lot of these like unknown bands that were like my favorite. The Ducks. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Ducks.
They're so good.
Yeah. And like, you know, them 15 years ago was like, you could have convinced me that like that was the biggest band in the world that I could go see. And I knew that they weren't, but in my heart and those songs, it was like these people, these songs, this place, Swanee.
Magic.
So, yeah, bands like that, and it made me want to be in a band, you know?
Yeah.
Like to watch that camaraderie and...
Well, and the Ducks and Down to the Buffalo. And there are a few bands that play at Swanee that do feel... I totally know what you're saying.
Yeah.
They feel like the biggest band in the world when you're there.
Yeah.
Because there's something magic. First of all, these are great bands that we're talking about. But also there's something so magical that if you haven't been to Swanee, it's so hard to explain to people what that experience is like.
Yeah.
And I've recorded several episodes there and had the good fortune of going there. Especially the last like 8 years, I've gone to each Roots Festival.
Yeah.
Right. So going all the way back to the old Spring Fest and Mag Fest.
Yeah.
You know, but that's so interesting. Like that those bands that, you know, the Ducks. I don't think they're together anymore.
I don't think so either.
Because I know a couple of them played Swanee in some other iteration.
Separately.
You know. But seeing them or Elephant Revival, the time I saw Elephant Revival there, you know. I could do that all day. And John Stickley trio, a John Stickley trio set at Swanee. I don't know how to do that justice with my words. Right? It's just so incredible. Yeah. You know? That's awesome. So, and you mentioned though that at first, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but at first when you went to Swanee, you were kind of like,
I was mad at my parents. I was like, what are we doing here? We camped a lot since we were kids. So it wasn't the camping that bothered me. It was like what is this? We have to spend all day sitting here listening to music of bands I've never even heard of. Right. When I could sit at home on my Walkman, listen to Jessica Simpson.
She's going to write you back.
Yeah,
any
she's
day
totally
now.
gonna. She's totally gonna. Yeah. But no, I was just a kid. I was annoyed. I didn't know why it would be fun other than we're camping, but you're making me listen to these people that, you know, this is your music, Mom. But that was before I played, you know. I don't remember exactly how old I was, but it was one of the first MagFests. And so it hadn't even come onto my radar what music was going to mean to me yet. Yeah. So I'm not mad at myself for being an angsty kid, but I look back now and I'm like, oh girl, if you only knew.
So
you only knew.
Yeah, how cool is that though that your parents stuck to it, you know? I don't know, and as a parent, what do you know, I mean, your kid's growing up in a very musical household. Yeah. So do you just sort of like, hey, this is us, we're going to do what we're going to do, going to expose you to whatever? Right. Or are you conscious of like what you're exposing your kid to? You know what I mean? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. I think Thomas and I have joked, like, since I was pregnant with him, that he's going to be like a pro soccer player or something. He's going to do something that we have no training or ability in at all, and that's fine. Sure. And I think we made that joke, but there's some truth to it. Like, he's gonna be who he's gonna be. Right. But yeah, we definitely hope that he ends up wanting to play on stage with us in 20 years, you know?
That would be so cool.
It would be amazing. I mean, it would be such a dream of our hearts, but I don't want to project that onto him if he doesn't want to. Sure. I will say, though, already at almost 3 years old, he's certainly showing signs of loving this.
Oh, that's great.
This music adventure that we've put him on. So
he's only 3, but is he banging on stuff?
Yeah, he's got a little drum kit that he loves, and he's got songs of ours that he identifies with, which I think there's some power in that. Like, what's this little person who really doesn't understand the words or doesn't understand what's going on, but can feel this melody line? Obviously, we tapped into something with this melody line. Yeah. And he doesn't do it with every song. So, like, he's got a handful of songs of Thomas's. He's got a handful of songs of mine that he does that with. and we're like, okay, these are the keepers, you know?
Is there a correlation between those songs and how you like the songs that he likes and the songs that you feel like, yeah, I got something special here?
Yeah, well, what's funny is one of them of Thomas's is one that didn't really get pegged as like a lead single or whatever kind of song, but Abel has loved it from the get-go. And then when they were in the UK, it was one of the ones that a radio station was like, oh, we really love that one. Like, I know that's not the one that you guys were promoting, but we really love that one. And we were like, ha, it's the one that Abel liked.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So maybe that'll always stick. Who knows? Maybe he's our litmus test.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, a little like a little critic until he gets old enough to know any better, you know.
And then he'll really be a critic.
Then the world messes him up, and he
he
starts to see images on TV.
Oh, that's right. He'll join a punk band.
He's on the internet before noon.
Yeah, right. Not in our house, mister.
You mentioned, I love the name, the Lionhearts, and you
Thanks.
mentioned that you were driving down the street, and that's when it came up. Can you talk about that inspiration? And
so band names are incredibly hard, or at least for me, because it's supposed to be a picture of this tiny, cosm that you're creating. Like, what do we call you? Here's what we call you.
Yeah.
And I wanted it to be something, that held some weight, but I didn't want to overthink it. And like, since the Heartbreakers was already taken as a band name, I, had to pick something else, because how awesome would that have been, Hannah Harber and the Heartbreakers?
Yeah, it makes so much sense.
Oh, Tom, I love you. I miss you. But I was driving, and there was a billboard. I can't remember exactly what the billboard said, but had the word heart on it. And I was like, okay, I really am drawn to this heart thing. Like, what is this?
Sure.
And the imagery of like Lionhearts and what that word really means, I don't remember exactly how it came, and it's okay with me that it doesn't, but I remember getting home and going, oh, I really love this. And I had voice texted Thomas, like, what about Lionhearts? And because we had sent out the most ridiculous things back and forth to each other. Like one of the ones he was like, Hannah Harber has a band. And I was like, yes, okay, hilarious, but no. So, we just kept going.
Yeah.
And ever since then, I love it. I'm okay with it. It's not like, it doesn't have to be any more profound than just it's a band name, but I really love it.
Yeah.
I think there's some power behind it.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah, thanks.
I think it explains the music too, to an extent, as much as the band name can, right? And that's what you're talking about. It's how you put a moniker on something that's you feel, that your son is like connecting to in some way, and people are connecting to on a deep level.
Yeah.
How the hell you give that a name?
Right.
Yeah. I think Prince didn't. He was just.
Some people can get away with it.
Yeah. That's great. You've talked a lot about like bouncing ideas off of Thomas, right?
Yeah,
Who's an amazing musician in his
Yes, he
own
is.
right. Does that creative process? What does that look like for you guys? This isn't where I ask you what it's like to fight on the road, but what is that?
Got it in
there. Like for me, and you got a chance to meet Chris earlier. Our disciplines are very different. She right now is doing some woodworking. She's a painter.
Yeah.
She is a film editor. None of that is within my sphere of expertise. I'm more of a writer. That's kind of my thing, and words are my thing. And so it's good because we're able to give a totally different perspective on things to each other, right?
Yeah.
So I can look at something that she's doing. I may not be an expert on it, but at least I can look at it from a different perspective. And I can almost as a not disinterested fan, because she's my partner in life, but still I can look at it from a more objective perspective, and she can do the same for something that I'm recording or something that I'm writing. But you guys both make music, and it's different, but it's in the same sphere,
It
right?
is. Yeah.
So what does that look like for you in terms of giving each other feedback and collaborating?
It changes daily sometimes. And I think when we first met one another, we met at a show. The band I was with then opened for them, and we were both dating other people. There was no like funny business. It was just a creative intrigue with what the other was doing.
Very cool.
And so I think because it started knowing that we both were pursuing that helped a lot. Yeah. It's not like we were both like wallowing in our dying art form or what. We were already doing it.
Yeah.
And that was a good starting point. But since then, any relationship dynamic with give and take is hard. inside of two creatives, it's especially hard.
Yeah.
So we're learning all the time, but I think to sit at home and I can look over at him like during an episode of Westworld and be like, yo, that would be a great line. Or like, then you automatically, that inspires you to kick into some other thought process and we can go on those tangents because we both want to be tuned in like that. So I'm so grateful for him. But he also is like a stellar guitar player. And if I'm going to have a guitar lesson, like why not take one from the guy that you wake up next to? You know what I mean? Like he's right there.
Right.
So that part's really nice. People joke with us, like, what's it like to sit at home? You just sit around and sing all the time? No.
Yeah, I wouldn't
like,
picture that.
Travis's line about, like, a guy who mows lawns doesn't want to come home and mow his own lawn. Like, we avoid music sometimes as a means of self-love. Like, let's step out of this for a minute because it's way too easy to be too business-minded or too analytical of something that you're doing and then letting that be your relationship for a minute. You know, and then on the other side, we'll swing to have days where like all we do is bounce some ideas. And so I think it's seasonal and we're just learning how to accept what that looks like at each time. But we just, for the first time in the last, I'd say 8 to 10 months, have started really writing songs together.
Oh, wow.
And so that's, 6 years into a relationship with two songwriters and we never really crossed that bridge. I think for a while I rebelled against it. I was a little nervous about it, insecure maybe even. He's a great songwriter.
Sure.
But we're doing it.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That part's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. I mean, I don't think I'd want to, it would be difficult for me. Again, you have to get out of your ego. It would be difficult for me to have another writer that I lived with and that I shared my life with. I don't know how, I mean, I guess you adjust, right?
Yeah.
And sounds like for a while you went, okay, we're going to have kind of our separate things. We're going to bounce ideas every once in a while. And then you came to that point where you went, all right, now I'm at a place where I can. Right. But you've also, I'm sure, grown quite a bit
absolutely.
as a couple, but also as a songwriter yourself. Right. Right. You've grown probably a confidence that's
well, and I think that's where that artist way stuff, and I recommend anybody listening that creates in any capacity or feels stuck, especially in any capacity. I cannot recommend her program enough. But she does discuss, like, we all have an inner artist child, and our perception of our artist child really can kill the thing that we're trying to create. And so when you then show the thing that you already feel vulnerable about to someone who can critique it, and their critique holds water, then you're just adding some extra pain onto the thing that was already killing you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I know for sure that once I could get over the critique of my own like artist child, I could show him things. And if he did rightfully critique it or say, oh, I love it, I could believe either thing, Yeah. So it is about getting better individually, but there's seasons of relationship and we're just trying to roll through them.
And there's also nothing threatening about that, right? Like, it's okay if you have an idea, he doesn't feel it or doesn't like it, or maybe it's not a good idea. Right. And that's totally fine too, right?
Yep.
You were talking about the names, like when I was starting the show, you should have seen the list of names. I think there's an Instagram post at some point of some of the ridiculous ideas. Yeah. And some of them I'd be like, all right, I got something here, and then I'd take it to Chris or to a friend and they'd be like, ooh, you might want to keep working on that one, buddy. I don't even remember what, like creativity. That was one that I came up with.
Oh, yeah.
I loved it. And nobody else did. And now I get it now. As I look back on it, I'm like, that is a dumb idea. It's not good.
Well, even if it's not dumb, but just like, nope, that wasn't it.
Yeah, it wasn't it. Yeah, you're right. It's not necessarily dumb. I thought it was so clever at the time. And nobody else thought it was clever at all. And they're right. I think the Marinade is the one.
It is. I love it.
Right? Oh, man. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
This has been so great.
I'm honored to be a part of this.
Thank you. And thank you for listening.
Yeah,
and
hell yeah.
I'm so stoked for you and for the Kickstarter and the album and like shows. What you got shows coming up? Anything?
We're not playing too much. We're actually I'm headed to Tampa tomorrow, which I guess this won't come out in that time, so we can scratch that part. We are going to be in Sanford, actually, our last show before we head back into the studio at Tuffy's on the 27th of this month.
Yep.
And then we're going to call it quits for a little bit to jump straight into the studio and be there for a while. So
So full band at Tuffy's.
Yeah, full band
Okay.
at Tuffy's, our last Lionhearts show before we get back in the studio. And then we'll reemerge sometime early fall when everything's packaged and ready for sale.
That's so great. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Oh, that was perfect. I just thought we were going to do an intro and then we got to talking.
Yeah, I mean, I can be long-winded, so I hope that was okay.
No, it was wonderful.
Cool.
I don't know what to do with it now, but I want I want all that out there. So
Yeah, you could do with it whatever you
cool.
please.
The battle lines drawn through my heart, and victory is undefined. I wanna run to the other side of the sun. Whoa, now, spirit arise. Long time coming, long time coming. It's true. It's a long time coming.
Hannah Harber, y'all, what an honor. Thank you so much, Hannah. Thank you so much to everybody else for listening. I appreciate y'all so much. Stay tuned to all of our social media so you can stay updated on what Hannah's got going on. She has made a lifelong fan out of me for sure. So stay tuned to @Marinade Podcast on Twitter, Marinade_podcast on Instagram, and Facebook.com/Marinade Podcast so that you can keep up with anything that we find out about Hannah and her new record coming out with the Lionhearts. They are still working on that thing, and if this unfinished track that we just got to hear, this one that hasn't even been mastered yet, is any indication, this is going to be an incredible record. I'm so stoked to hear that song. I'm so excited for what they have coming. Make sure, if you haven't already, y'all, go over to wherever you consume podcasts and just give us a rating. It makes a big difference. Also want to make a little plug for Patreon. Our Patreon patrons are incredible. We just released episode 2 of Jason's Journey, which is those creative moments that don't necessarily fit in the podcast, experiences that I've had either in my own life or they're experiences that I've had meeting other people and hearing their stories. A lot of times they involve musicians. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're my travels, but just stories that kind of led me to where I am and to releasing this podcast and to writing and all the things that I try to do creatively. So check us out over on Patreon for just a few bucks a month. You can really make a difference in what we're trying to do with the show. I try to make sure I send out swag to our Patreon patrons as often as possible. We just got magnets, and I'm putting those in the mail this weekend. Also looking to make a t-shirt. I actually have a meeting coming up this week for a t-shirt design that we have some ideas around. Give me some feedback, y'all. Shoot me a message and let me know whether you think you'd be interested in a t-shirt. If I set them at like $20 on the website, if that's something you'd be interested in, I think that's what we're gonna try to do to just make sure that we're recouping the cost of it. But I'm excited about that prospect. Thank you all so much again for listening. I have been getting down on some really cool stuff, but not a whole lot different from the last time because y'all have me so motivated to continue to crank out these episodes. They've been going so well, and you've given me such great feedback, and we still have another one in the hopper, y'all. So what I'm getting down on hasn't changed a ton, but I have discovered a couple of new things. I've been listening to Big Red Machine. Check that record out. It's amazing. I also discovered Water Liars. I don't know how this has escaped me, but I just came on my Pandora, and I've just really been enjoying their self-titled record. I've also been consuming a lot of Hannah Harber. You can find her stuff over on Spotify. And then I kind of revisited T. Hardy Morris's Dude the Obscure and found out he's coming around to Orlando pretty soon. So I'm going to fire off an email and see if we can't charm T. Hardy Morris to come on the Marinade. Other than that, I'm still reading Summer of Hate, that book about Charlottesville by Halls Spencer. It's incredibly well written, journalistic approach. It is very fair, which is, I think, very difficult to do when you're talking about something that is so emotionally charged. But I've learned a ton about some of the goings-on around Charlottesville, some of the shortcomings of the police and other folks involved, and hopefully it's a lesson for us to prevent something from like that from happening again in the future. Such a tragic event and such a watershed moment for our country, and I hope in the long run that we react the way that we need to react. Still got episode 19 coming out with the great Micah Schnabel returning. Can't wait for that. Can't wait for y'all to hear it. And other than that, I got Jason's Journey coming out, episode 3, just about a week after this episode is released. So that's only for our Patreon patrons. Head on over to patreon.com if you can afford just a few extra bucks a month to help support us. It makes a big difference. Shout out to Bonnie Payton, our brand new Patreon patron. We keep adding folks to the fold. It's a nice little community that we got going. I love y'all. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Cheers, y'all.